Hey there, you know we love Half-Life modding on this channel, and somehow I still have not yet covered one specific mod that I really enjoyed back in the day. One that was, for the very most part, only made by a singular developer in their free time. It's a strange mod that tells a strange tale, one that ended up getting a sequel that included a huge ARG and was not made in source. I'm talking about Estranged. Even though there are 2 released acts and one more is in the works, I'll begin with Act 1 for now. Though I will give you my thoughts on both parts in this video and also talk about what I hope to see in the sequel once it releases. Estranged Act 1 released on Steam on January 16, 2014 to some good reviews, especially praising its atmosphere, and if there's one thing Estranged does right, it's atmosphere. While I will be covering everything this mod has to offer, including its story, I want to put special emphasis on highlighting all the important details it added to give such a rich atmosphere, which I think I'm able to do with about 10 years of level design experience, specifically 10 years in source. Man, murderers get less. By the way, I recommend checking out the games before watching this video. You can probably play through both of them in one day. This video won't be spoiler free. Though if you do now go and play them, make sure to come back to this video as there is a lot of interesting analysis of this game to be done. So now, let's get right into it. Before we do that, consider joining the Discord. It's well moderated, there's no ping spam, and we announce videos and other events there, including a giveaway, which more info on that later in the video. Link is in the description. Also subscribe, most of you haven't. We start the mod off in a boat, seemingly as the captain. Most likely a fisherman, considering the sketches of fish in front of us on the table. The game features some unique shaders like depth of field, which are pretty well made, especially given that it's source, though I will be disabling it for your viewing pleasure. We receive a message from the radio as we look at all the swaying objects in the ship, which is just great detail by the way.
If anyone can hear this, my name is Jonathan Darrell, and I need help. These things, they've taken over the island. Anyone, please, I have supplies, but...
An automated message from ARC Corporation. There has been a safety breach. Mandatory curfew is in effect.
After this, we crash. We awake again, swimming up to the surface. Breathing sounds were added. These were manually placed and are a really good detail. Moving along the docks, as we enter the Red Ton Shipping Permit office, the wind shuts the door behind us. Again, this is manually added. And just so that I don't repeat myself, just as a general rule of thumb, if you see anything happen that doesn't happen regularly in Half-Life 2, it is manually added. The intro is accompanied by a custom soundtrack, as is the rest of this mod, and it's a really beautiful one. You'll also notice some shader effects like ambient occlusion, lens flares and motion blur when looking around. All of this can be configured as well. So this really is just a great addition. As we continue our search for the mysterious John Darrell and for ARC Corporations that we heard from on the radio, we come across a newspaper, in which we learn the reason why we crashed. The lighthouse was decommissioned just recently. We also read an article about ARC Corporation buying out a pharmaceutical company. We solve a puzzle alongside the shoreline, which we get explained naturally through level design just before having to do it ourselves, which is always nice. We then see someone get murdered in cold blood.
Hey, are you okay down there? Come on up!
After we follow the murderer to his shed, he reveals that his name is John Darrell, the guy we heard on the radio. He tells us about the happenings here. There's a ton of stuff that has gone down on this island, saying that he himself got to this island 3 months ago with his wife and daughter. They disappeared after shit went down. He tells us to please be on the lookout for them. He also has a radio, though all signals are blocked by ARC Corporation. He advises us to follow the railroad to where he assumes ARC Corporation is at to hopefully stop the signal so that he's able to call for help. Also turns out he is not a murderer. Instead, it seems that some kind of virus is... It's zombies. There are zombies. They are quite a bit different than the zombies of Half-Life 2 and function more similarly to those of Underhill. If you don't know what that mod is, check out our video on it. I'm pretty sure I've referenced Underhill in pretty much every single one of my mod reviews, in case you needed reason to watch that video. He gives us his weapon for protection. To note about the atmosphere once more, this place looks properly lived in. Tons of small props, each telling its own story. The toilet, for example, is clogged, and interacting with it won't produce a flushing sound, but instead one of you just dipping your hand in it. Pretty disgusting, but unique. Also, the voice actor of John Darrell did a pretty good job. In general, voice acting in this mod and its sequel is really solid. I must criticize the fact though that he just has a corpse laying on his bed. This is a thing that I see way too often in games or movies. Do you guys know how bad a corpse smells? I mean, I don't either, to be clear. No, seriously, calm down, I have no idea. But I know that it's definitely not a smell you want anywhere near your hideout, let alone inside it. Leaving the shed, we find a treehouse including some fun shadow play and a drawing by the daughter of John Darrell. We encounter our first zombie in a beautiful set piece enlightened by streetlight only interrupted by moths. The zombies are pretty aggressive, though a bullet to the head is enough to stop them. There's more world building in form of a security check where you can find lots of notes. We then find and start up a train, actually getting to drive it. Pretty fun. We quickly get stopped again as it is to be expected in any source mod with a driving section. As we open the crossing, we see that zombies have flooded the area over our monitor. Rushing back to our train, we continue onwards for a solid 100 feet before we're stopped again. The main gameplay loop begins here, in which we just wander through the environments and fight through zombies. I want to note the flashlight here. The flashlight functions on a battery system, again, very similar to that of Underhill. We reach the sewers. There are a few more nice set pieces and scenes here, and the sound design is great. I wanted to note though that his water flow texture is the wrong way around. Yeah, we enter this cool looking flood control chamber where we meet another human.
Hey, don't move!
Running away proves futile as we crash down and get knocked out. We back up again, bound to a chair. The same guy speaks with us.
Gah, there we go. You feel alright? You sure?
To shorten what he's saying, he's basically saying that we were tracked down ever since we entered the facility. Though he then leaves because his shift is over and he doesn't get paid enough to stay any longer. Which, this adds a lot of new implications. As he leaves, he tells us to get comfortable because we'll be dead by tomorrow anyway. We hear him arguing with someone. If you listen enough, you'll hear him say,
No, you're not paying me for this. I'm out of here.
Meaning whoever he works for is standing right there. We then have a chance to escape. By pressing A and D, or whatever your keys for sideways movement are, you can wiggle the chair around until it falls over, in a sequence directly taken from Batman Arkham City. We then get into a pseudo chase scene. We run through the sewers and see a car driving above us. And in a clever puzzle where we have to throw rocks at wood planks above us, we receive the second weapon of this mod, a melee, the hammer. By the way, as you may notice, items have a glow around them. I often criticize this in mods, as I think it takes away some of the immersion. Well, thankfully, if you want to immerse yourself even deeper into this atmosphere, you can easily disable this in the settings. We continue on, move through a cool looking van featuring dynamic shadows which, these are not easy to work with in Source unless you modify the engine a bit, which they did for this mod. It's great to see them use this often. We arrive at an elevator which, after malfunctioning, as all elevators do in Source mods, brings us down even further into the underground. There's a really weird moment here which I have no idea how to slip past the playtesters. The mod thus far has had incredible atmosphere and sound design, which both very much go hand in hand. Though for some reason there is this obnoxiously loud water loop sound effect that could be heard through the entire map. It almost gave me a headache. And it was all for this singular room. It could have just been muted until you entered the room and then muted again afterwards. I don't know, such a small odd choice. The rest of the map consists of tons of hallways that almost gave backrooms vibes, and once you do reach the water room after a while and die, you will come to find that no autosave was done for the entire level.
Oh no.
Thus, you'll get your ears destroyed once again. This level is a huge flop, though I did like this one part where you have to sneak past zombies surrounded by glass bottles. They only awake after you break one. A fun idea. After 2 almost crashes and drinking rotten milk laying in the sewer for health, you finally leave the map. Shortly after this we come across Dr. Kleiner. Well, it might look like him, but his name is actually George Richmond. Even though he wonders how you even got here, he's glad that you're here and needs you to help him reach your communication center as fast as possible. And I have to say, every interaction with this guy is perfect. Not only is the voice acting great, he also interacts with you flawlessly, even guiding you on how you could potentially free him. There are tons of interactions you can have with him depending on what you do. For example, if you decide to walk away, he'll plead with you to come back. We managed to free him by picking up a keycard of someone named Liam Jones. Remember that name. We find a gun range in the next room, one that actually functions. As you spend time in here, you'll hear George Richmond talk about newspapers hanging on the wall. It's interactions like these that make characters come to life, and damn did it work. I played this mod around 7 years ago and I still remember George. So if you're making a mod, take the time with the characters, add that little extra interaction. Even if only 5% of people end up seeing it, that is 5% of players whose immersion you have increased tenfold at least. We move around a bit through the facility in a complete vibe shift to a tidy, modern looking environment that is honestly incredibly well done. Making a clean looking environment look good in Source is 1000 times harder than doing the same with a messy environment. Even though it might seem easier at first, you don't have to add as many details. Or so you think at least. There's a lot more leeway with messy environments. You can really just spray dirt decals on concrete wall textures or place graffitis everywhere and put a few props on the ground. Obviously I'm at least slightly simplifying it here. Perfect looking environments do require tons of effort. With modern environments, every corner needs to look perfect or otherwise you end up with shit like this. Doesn't really look that modern. We then reach a computer. George finds that the generators are close to overheating and that we need to go and manually disable it, even giving us directions, 2 floors above. We come across an elevator where we can actually choose ourselves where to go. There are 3 possible floors. The cellar is flooded, but by solving the puzzles there you are rewarded with tons of ammo and batteries for your flashlight. 1 floor above you can find a bit of side story on a computer that is surprisingly interactable. You can look at pictures and videos of cats. There is nothing of importance on this floor though. Well, not saying pictures of cats aren't important. The most upper floor is the one where we need to go. We find a computer and manage to log it out of the generator control, which we only do after having to read a password from an email. Interactions I've only ever seen in this Half-Life mod. After this, the power goes out. George talks to us over intercom, guiding us to him in the communications room. This is one of the most beautiful rooms this mod has to offer. One that I still think about every so often. George tries to send out a signal, though Ark blocks it again after a short moment. He's shocked at how this is possible. noting that there is an old satellite station on the other side of the island that hasn't been used since the 70s, that only that bomb may be powerful enough to block the signal. Before he gets to finish his sentence saying that we'll have to get there by going through the town, we hear knocking on the door, and someone with a loud voice demanding to get in. George tells us to escape through the vent. As soon as we do, the room gets stormed, which you can only hear. This really leads you to question, who the hell are these people? Another nice detail happens shortly afterwards. We have to use an object to break this fan in the vents. Nothing new really. We have done this in Half-Life 2, though in this case, the barrel we use actually dents. Like, damn! As mentioned, I have 10 years of experience in the source level editor, and I have no idea how I would go about doing that. Body groups? Maybe? Though the blended prop also has unique physics interactions. Okay, let me stop the nerd talk. We then arrive at the final level of this mod, the warehouse. You will have to fight a ton of ARC soldiers here. I actually know now who these people are, but this only gets explained in the sequel. Their design will also end up getting retconned. Unfortunately, the game had a fatal flaw here. Up until this point, you might not have noticed that you can only carry one weapon at a time, which is a fine mechanic in and of itself. But basically only introducing it in combat is not that great, especially since you have next to no ammo for any weapon and thus need to constantly check for weapons your enemies dropped. Once there's 2 enemies, you'll have a hard time trying to fight back. Overall, I still enjoyed this segment. It was a challenge and had epic boss music. At the end you mount a crane, smash open the gates, fight a couple more ARC soldiers, then enter a hut and crash down the end. Yeah, not a joke. It's that much of a cliffhanger. And to be honest, up until I started working on this video, I had not yet played Act 2, which is what we'll get to now. To note though, the credits of this mod are great. You can pause, go up and down at your own will, and it even includes links to Steam profiles and similar of developers. This is how all game credits should work. Also, Estranged Act 1 has a workshop, albeit it doesn't have that much content. I share my thoughts on both mods after I've covered the sequel. And well, let me correct myself, Act 2 is not a mod, it's a standalone Unreal Engine 4 game. The sequel, Estranged: The Departure, was released in 2017 in early access and got updated over the years, and is now a finished product, with its last update being in 2021. Not a lot of people seem to talk about The Departure, most likely because it is no longer a source mod and because it actually costs $6. It used to be free back in early access though. I'll get into more potential whys later. Now, let's jump straight into Act 2, The Departure. Now again, here's a lot of pre-notes because this mod has a ton of nice extras. There is an arcade with 2 game modes, so-called shorts that have short mini-stories that are set in the Estranged universe, which I'll cover later. And again, you have lots of settings so that you can pretty much enable and disable any graphical or HUD feature. Really great for a game that focuses so much on atmosphere. Let's start the main campaign for now though. The game begins with a scene set before Act 1. We are in Scotland, in what seems to be our hull. The mood here is incredible really. This seems like heaven. Unfortunately, you are unable to disable only the crosshair this time. The game does at least an alright job of mimicking Source's aesthetic. It's missing that Source touch, but overall, this looks like something that could also be in Source. The movement is also similar, and so are physics interactions. You can have quite a lot of fun in this house. Turning on the TV, you see reports of a private security firm called Sokol Glogda, who's being criticized for the use of live ammunition in all of their assignments as per policy. They are speculated to often be used by the government for overseas operations, which is why the government seems to not comment on this matter. Sokol was in the news earlier this year as well for the accidental shooting of an ARC employee on one of their offshore drilling platforms. The 37-year-old employee swam to the beach after being shot in the leg and falling off the platform. We are not confirmed the gunshot was one of theirs, but refused to further comment on the case. After leaving the house, we move towards the boat, where we find a bit of a retcon. The design of the ship has been changed. I'm not sure why really. Perhaps it is more realistic this way. And actually, the entire intro gets retconned. We hear John Darrell on the radio again. We even see the island in the distance, before we crash once more. We then awake right where the first mod left off, crash down in the hole. We fall even further down into water. This area is really beautiful, and it honestly looks like it could be Source still. Though as I mentioned, it's missing that Source touch to it, which is up to preference if you like this more. We move along these caves and eventually find this elevator shaft alongside a radio, where we hear another distress signal. And oddly enough, for some reason, it reuses most of the script of what we heard from John Darrell in both of the intros, leaving out basically just the name. And it's also re-recorded. Here's some side-by-sides.
Hello? If anyone can hear this, I need help.
Hello? If anyone can hear this, my name is Jonathan Darrell, and I need help. These things, they've taken over the island.
Anyone, please, I have supplies, but they're out there.
Message.
I think this is simply an odd choice that doesn't really require further reading into, I guess. Also comparing the voices, it seems that this is John Darrell we are hearing over the radio. Also I realized something with how they tried imitating physics mechanics like those of Half-Life 2. To preface, this has been done correctly before. Take Project Borealis for example, the fan-made Episode 3 game. All of its tech demos were perfect. They perfectly took over Source physics while also implementing their own mechanics. So Unreal Engine can definitely be used to implement Source physics, though even the slightest changes can lead to a whole different feeling of the physics. The most glaring problem of Estranged Act 2 being that there is no pickup sound. Yeah, that's it. It gives a very tech demo feel that way. A small feedback sound would have been great. We solve a quick puzzle that involves starting up an elevator and some weird cables leading directly into rocks before we find an audio tape. There are a total of 9 of these in the game. They are, usually, recorded by someone named Liam Jones. Liam Jones' story is basically an entire ARG that you have to piece together throughout the game. And to be honest, I was originally planning on doing this at the end, but I have decided to simply solve this throughout as we receive the clues. Because it's so deeply intertwined with the game's story that if you don't care for the ARG and don't read every single detail, you are massively missing out. This first tape says that they were studying algae and realized that it glows. That's it pretty much. I know this makes it seem like that my whole introduction wasn't really worth the hype, but I promise it's worth listening to. We find another radio, again somebody, presumably John Darrell, complaining about the curfew. The voice says,
God, I hope they're not trying to cover this up.
We then find the office of Liam Jones. There's a bunch to be extracted from this room alone. We first find the tape. Liam talks about the samples he's studying that they got sent in by the head office. He then starts straight up yapping about a misplaced card, telling some Hawthorne that he needs a new one. This yapping goes on for real long.
Also Hawthorne, when you get the chance, I lost my security badge.
That'll be good. Okay.
If you may remember, we saw a card on the ground in the first game with the name Liam Jones, so him misplacing his card is definitely fitting and a great tie-in. He could have definitely shortened his speech though. There's a PC that is interactable. You can find emails about the lost card, one featuring a PDF you can open, accompanied by the message, "Should we investigate this?" The PDF includes an article that talks about ARC buying out Philips Pharmaceuticals. Lots of employees got laid off, being forced to move off the island due to insufficient income. This was also seen in the first game in the newspaper at the start, indicating this is actually one of the next pages of that newspaper. The company was bought after the previous CEO was seen running naked through town. His ex-wife said that his buyout was probably strategic. There's another mention of Liam Brothers Mindside, which is probably where we are right now, and that it is apparently in talks with ARC as well. Its close position to Philips Pharmaceuticals could be beneficial to ARC, it says. There's also mention of red algae spreading around the island and that people are worried. And oh boy, were they right in being that. There's a QR code on the ground. If you are to scan this, you will find a video recorded by Liam Jones, portrayed by a real person. Fun fact, this is Alan Edwardes, creator of the game. The video is a guide for ARC employees. It mostly consists about talks of the importance of keeping ARC secrets, well, secret. We then find Liam's lost card, which we need to open a door. I like this headpiece here that we passed before entering the second chapter. Post abandoned. Shortly after this we get trapped. Though it turns out this is just a regular scan of the facility we just entered, ARC East. The game gets bonus points for the fact that the scanning lights also reflect on your view model. Also, in case you are a regular person playing this for the first time, you will notice on the new game screen that the game only has 3 chapters. We reach the second chapter at about 15 minutes? 10 if you subtract the intro, and we have yet to encounter any enemies. The first game was short as well, but this one seems to be real short. We walk through labs, still no enemies. We find another tape recorded by Gareth Thomas, who says that the glowing of the algae is caused by a plankton, and that there is no need to worry. We find another QR code, in which Liam Jones talks about live samples and that people should not ask too many questions. We find another radio, saying that they'll keep broadcasting until someone catches a signal. We climb through some vents and find another radio. We now learn that this has indeed been John Darrell the entire time, as he mentions his wife and kid. We find another tape. It's Liam again, mentioning that Dr. Frederick Persola has been taken to the hospital after becoming violent and attacking other scientists. He has been brought to the hospital and will be transported off the island. In case you didn't catch on yet, the zombie virus seems to be coming from the algae. You see how much you would be missing out on if you weren't actively listening to this and following the ARG? We find that paper on the ground. People are removing algae. The writing suggests that it could maybe put a positive spin on the algae, and that someone should investigate costs of doing that. It seems to suggest that ARC has interest in keeping the algae around, even though they are likely aware of the negative impact of it. We find another computer, though nothing noteworthy besides the newspaper found in the first game is found on it. Also, I want to note that up until this point, you were able to find health kits at like every single corner. I found like 5 health kits, but I had no way of using them yet, as there were no enemies and barely any ways to receive damage. Well, finally, we see someone. A flashlight peeks around the corner, though to our detriment, we have to follow it. Very tense music plays throughout, and I must admit it had me kind of stressing. A very nicely designed scene in areas looks somewhat like a mix of Black Mesa's and Mirror's Edge's aesthetic. We follow through tons of tight corridors, only seeing glimpses of this person. The person leaves behind burning barrels, twice in a row. One of them involving a cool moment where you have to rush and hide in a room before they explode. Just another clever scene. We make it outside of ARC. The person is nowhere to be seen, aside from a truck we see passing over us. I have a bit of a rant, which is not specifically about this game, as pretty much every game does it, but it does apply here. The very obvious path is down this entrance, even though everything around us is just fences. Right now we're just some fishermen trying to escape. We're not on some sort of mission or anything to take down ARC. So why, say this was real life, do we not just climb over the fence and run over the mountains? There should at least be more reason we go down into the soul. Maybe add some sort of chase to this or something. I would never in my life jump down a hole knowing that the last one I was in was filled to the brim with literal zombies unless I was forced to, especially given that I only have a shabby pickaxe. On our way down, our pickaxe breaks, and we see the first zombie. And then came a moment that legitimately scared me. This was a pretty great section, I thought. We solve a quick water puzzle that requires some really good timing and find another radio, where John Darrell mentions us. We make it out of the sewers and find the outdoor area.
This looks pretty cool, stylized and...
Bunny! Oh my god! Oh my god, hi! Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. We find another John Darrell radio repeating the same stuff, and we find a gun, to which a few zombies spawn immediately. To go a bit deeper on the atmosphere of this, I really love how this mod plays with colors. While the nighttime this game is set in pretty much only allowed for blue tones thus far, we went from caves that were rather realistically lit, to labs only lit by the night sky and vending machines, to sewers which were rather ugly, I guess, of course fitting the sewer aesthetic, to then get into this almost cartoony blue area. It gives off a Halloween vibe. The trees, the bright moonlight, the zombies. I like it. We then get introduced to the next hurdle, a huge turret. It has a giant minigun attached to it. By sneaking past it or by shooting the explosive barrel behind it, it can easily be disarmed. It still proves a challenge though. Do not try to steer any zombies in front of it. It will always target you first. We find it another time only around the corner, this time involving a lot of sneaking. Moving on, we find the warehouse and get shot. A person towers over us. The letters SG are printed on their chest, short for so-called Glockner. We awake in a room, seemingly being tortured. The guy goes on to ramble a ton, mainly about what ARC is doing, while threatening us, saying it's all part of a precautionary plan, stating that potential billions of people are being protected here. He demands us to tell him who we're cooperating with, otherwise...
Hell isn't a severe enough word. It will describe the pain that will be put through.
After passing out once more, we awake in a cell. Bread gets thrown into a room, which we can eat and actually heals us a bit. Yum. Then we're able to go to sleep. After we do this, we awake to alarms and sounds of zombies being shot. The vent to our cell very luckily breaks open and throws a crate out of it. To this we can climb out and... I'm not sure if I'm misinterpreting here, but this area here looks like flesh, right? It could also be a rock texture with the red lights on it, but I kind of prefer the theory of the red algae overtaking the environment like that. We see dead zombies, a dead Glockner soldier, and then enter the final chapter. Fight or flight. We must enable this elevator, which you do by receiving 2-factor codes and counting bunnies. We find the next QR code. Liam Jones is drinking. His job was replaced by a Glockner mercenary. He asks if it may be because he lost his card so often. He wonders why they picked so-called Glockner, saying that they kill people. Someone seems to walk in on the video, though we don't hear them. Liam Jones makes excuses as to why he's still there, saying he's just picking up his stuff. This is the last Liam Jones QR code of the game. Though there was one earlier somewhere, which I missed. Though I was looking up this great French re-upload of it, it starts off with him saying to someone behind the camera that they just reuse animal cages for something. The rest is about safety, saying that the best strategy to keep people away from the facility is to threaten them, also noting that the local government has given ARC special powers in this area to detain, question and in some cases convict people of trespassing, stealing secrets and not tampering with ARC's work. She also seems very annoyed by the end. To close off the Liam Jones arc, he mentions an email at one occasion. If you are to write something to it, it will give you an automatic response saying, "It is dangerous to speak out, but someone has to." This automatic response is one of my last acts at the company, and as I sit here dragging around with questions swirling in my head, blurring into one another, eventually resulting in the same answer. ARC Corporations is evil. Why else would they work with Soko? Why else would they take over this island to perform secretive research? Did they keep taking my badge and hiding it? Sometimes it is better not to ask questions, and I think that I asked one too many. What did they expect though? Clearly there was something wrong with the substance that one of my colleagues was exposed to, and it clearly did something to him that means we can't talk to him anymore. I didn't sign up for this. I just hope I can get home without too much bother now that they announced tighter security on the island. If you don't hear from me, please share this video with as many people as possible. Liam Jones. The link video is the one you find at the final QR code, the one where he talks about getting fired. Also, ARC Global is a real website, though I'll get into it later, as it pretty much contains all the answers for everything. In the same room as the final QR code, we find remnants of what looks to be past PR meetings of ARC, noting that ARC is too secretive, that the current PR strategy is failing. In the next room we find a room discussing more strategies to make ARC more global, for example mentioning that they should implant ARC messaging into schools so that kids have it in their mind growing up. We then get into some cleverly designed architecture involving a keycard that has you backtrack in a very smooth way. Though before that happens, we finally encounter so-called Glockner soldiers. Fighting them isn't that hard, since they are a one-shot headshot. Still, I like this area and the vibe it gave. Nice atmosphere. The window lighting was a nice touch especially. We find a projector on which we learn more info. It talks about an incident at a dig site, one that plays a pivotal role in all of this. The dig site itself had bodies found inside of it, likely a missing research group from Glasgow University. It's a cave system containing pirate-era artifacts. The group was infected by algae contaminants, lost 2 so-called Glockner personnel in a cleanup process. Area is now quarantined. A retrospective mentions that this type of exploration of the island cannot continue. So-called Glockner has been posted on the island in critical areas and a fast response team is being assembled. We finally get out of this building and
hot diggity dark.
This place is magnificent! This is by far my favorite area of both games. I have a weakness for morning settings in general, to be fair, but this one particularly looks really realistic. And the wet streets, oh boy, great setting. After traversing through a bit of canals, we find an AR, which we immediately get to use on a few Glockner soldiers. The sounds are kind of weird. I like the weapon though. Also the soldier models are pretty cool, just thought I mentioned that. We find another radio where we hear John Darrell regretting coming here. Poor guy and everything, but like, we get it, dude. We're all stuck on this island, at least try and get your shit together. We enter the underground again. By the way, the game features absolutely no loading screens. I assume they are just cleverly hidden in scenes where you get knocked out or take an elevator, but it really immerses you to the game. Also, where's George Richmond? The canals are lit by beautiful sunlight and it's accompanied by a great soundtrack. Again, I really like this area. We then enter a cave system and find pirate artifacts. We are now in the dig site that was previously spoken of. Great foreshadowing there. We find an audio tape mentioning that these skeletons do in fact belong to pirates who most likely fled from the British Navy. Very eerie music is played here, accompanied only by ambient sounds of wind. It really sets a scene for this mysterious area, perhaps the most important area of Estranged story. We find another tape. This one mentions that there are human bite marks on the pirates. This implies that this zombie virus has been around since the Pirate Age and was contained in this cave. The Pirate Age is around the years of 1650 to 1730, by the way. We come across a hazmat zombie. The next tape mentions that some members of the research team fell ill, and that they'll be using hazmats from now on. That worked out great, didn't it? We find a huge pool of red algae, and have to walk right through it. Probably poisoning us and promising a death in the near future. We get out of the cave again to a beautiful landscape once more. It really, really is beautiful. All the wind turbines in the sun, just wow. We also get a glimpse at the old satellite station that George was talking about, and we finally reach it only soon after. We find the computer that's jamming the signal. We kill the servers and then hear John Darrell over the radio once more. Ecstatic that someone managed to kill the jammer. He immediately reaches out to anyone that may be there, and he receives a response. The Norwegian Coast Guard. I'm gonna let the scene play out, though I'll cut down on the pauses between him speaking and some filler.
Hello? Hello? Oh god, yes, you did it. Is there anyone there? This is an SOS. I repeat, an SOS. The island has been overrun. Our corporation have been stopping all broadcast messages from the island. We need immediate military assistance.
Her er Kystvakten. Kan du oppgi koordinatene dine? This is the Norwegian Coast Guard. Please state your coordinates.
Approximately 70 degrees, 59 minutes and 6 seconds north, and 2 degrees, 51 minutes and 54 seconds east.
These coordinates are not real, by the way. There is nothing there to be found.
I have to inform you, there is an active government defense operation on the way at your position. We are requesting clearance. Stand by.
Hello? What government defense operation? What are you talking about? Is anyone there? Someone pick up.
Commence expunge. Observe alert. 72 degrees, 59 minutes and 6 seconds north. 2 degrees, 51 minutes and 54 seconds east.
Oh no.
Commence expunge.
No. This isn't happening. Anyone listening to this right now, by whatever means you can, anyone on this frequency, just go. How would they do this?
Bombing starts, and as John Darrell mentioned, we now do our best to escape. We walk down to the cellar. Things start collapsing, but we manage to escape using a dinghy. This is the most beautiful scene of both games. Sorry dear town set in the morning, but you got beat. It's accompanied by a great soundtrack. Something about the vastness of the ocean is both scary and also calming, and I thought the decision to include a bunch of wind turbines was great, because it gives you scale to how giant the ocean is. Otherwise it would just be a line at the horizon. This way you can see how far it goes, despite the fact that it doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of its true size. We see jets flying over us, bombing the island. We drive through shipwrecks. All hope is lost, but we also won. It's a bittersweet moment. The island is now left for dead, but at least we escaped. Almost. We awake underwater. As we swim back up, we are surrounded by several Glockner soldiers and are ready to snipe us down in the water. By tons of swimming and avoiding lights, we eventually almost make it out, though we get spotted by boats. As much as I would love to keep the immersion high here, this part was weird. If you decide to play without the HUD, as is made an option by the game, you are most likely fully lost here. The HUD displays a new function in this part, saying that you have to press E to dive. I wandered around for ages and even save load broke the game before I figured this out by watching a walkthrough. We dive, we pass out, we awake on a knock on the ocean. The game loads into the next level for the first time in a similar manner to the first game, though this loading screen glitches. I'm not really sure why it did this, it kind of seems out of place, though perhaps it's to signify how large of a jump this game is about to make as we awake in Arctic regions. It can only be assumed that this is somewhere near the North Pole. Looking at maps of currents, this area of the ocean flows towards the north. As we lay on a glacier, we get dragged away, into a boat, and then drift off. We get dragged into some facility, pushed in a wheelchair to a hospital bed, to which we see a familiar face, John. Well, we don't really see him, but he tells us it's him. He says that he also drove off with a boat and miraculously found his research base, that he isn't sure what it's for. He instructs us to sleep for a bit longer. We finally awake after a time jump of unknown length. John is nowhere to be found. Wandering around his beautifully lit research base, we find 2 more tapes of John Darrell. One of them talks about the government cover-up happening on the island. The other one is about him accepting that his wife and kid are gone. Even if they somehow survived the zombies on the island, that they are surely gone now. We grab a keycard and open a door to which a cutscene happens. We see someone laying on the floor, who can at this point only be presumed to be John. As the music tenses up, a zombie walks around the corner, which is where the game ends. The game unfortunately didn't feature the cool dynamic credits I praised last time, But the credits do look beautiful and are only fitting after this great finale. They cover the shots in Arcade in 20 seconds. Arcade has a gun range as you'd expected, and the warehouse defense is just that. The first shot has you escape a train crash and get killed by zombies in a cool scene. The second shot is a beautiful story that plays like a poem almost, and I don't really want to butcher the story by retelling it. The third one relates most of the main story. You are an Arctic researcher controlling weather station data with perfect crunchy snow sounds, and you find an Ark bunker. The protagonist wonders where the hell there is one here. All of these are cool extras. Before getting into my final thoughts on both acts, what the hell is going on in terms of story in the game? Well, let me get back to the Ark Global website. You can read a bit about them, including their deep sea operations, which were mentioned in the so-called Glockner story. The most important takeaway is this headline: Ark Corporation commits to algae-based fossil fuel alternatives. And this note below it. The news comes after years of research into finding the best location to harvest the most potent strains of algae, which Ark is confident that it has found. So yeah, that's what the story is about. Ark needs the island for themselves, whatever it may cost. And since it's about fossil fuel alternatives, the entire world is at stake, and thus the government is in on it. Could one maybe argue that Ark is doing all this for the greater good? Act 3 will probably delve deeper into this. But yeah, basically, big company, big invention, it kills people, big cover. Okay, so what are my final thoughts and what do I hope for in the sequel? Well, let me start with Act 1. Act 1 is what I believe to thus far be the most complete experience. It feels fleshed out at every corner. It used the Source engine incredibly well and told a really great story in the short amount of time the game lasts. The environments, atmosphere and thus immersion are kept high. The characters are greatly integrated, and while the short amount of combat may be flawed, it was still fun. The cliffhanger ending was really harsh, but as the sequel is now released, it isn't too much of a problem. I highly recommend everyone to play this mod if you haven't yet. Even if you did go against my advice and have basically been spoiled the entire mod, it still is a great experience. The second act is interesting, and I have a lot more to say about it as it is a more flawed product than the first. Not to say that it's bad or anything. This time it isn't free, of course. So thus I'll try to answer the question of, is it worth it? I must say that the game started out slow. I didn't really enjoy the first chapter and beginning of the second one all that much. It was literally just wandering around.
But Lucia, Half-Life 1 and 2 also began with just wandering around.
Well, yes, but those ones served as a great introduction and were kept up by the tons of world building being done. And the very fun physics engine in the case of Half-Life 2 and tons of implemented interactions in both games. With the slightly janky engine of Estranged Act 2, they did do a good job at imitating the one of Source, but didn't quite meet the line. And thus it fell a bit flat and it wasn't enough to carry the first areas. I did really enjoy the pre-intro, and I must say that in terms of it being a sequel, it did a great job with all the tie-ins. Small things like Liam Jones' keycard are great, and especially going as far as to make an ARG out of it. Though therein also lies a problem. A lot of people that play games don't care that much. I think in this specific case, and looking at it in hindsight, it isn't that big of a problem, as anyone that goes out of the way to pay $6 for this game is a lot more likely to be a fan of the franchise. But in terms of general gamer audience, lots of people just skip extra audio tapes or extra reading, which think of that what you will, but that simply is the truth. So having basically 80% of your story be told through extras like that is questionable. I must say, as someone who loves to dive deep into lore, it was fun to slowly piece it together, but most will unfortunately just miss it. Even ignoring people that fully don't care about the story, as you can make a fair enough argument that developers don't have to care about those in their storytelling, expecting people to scan QR codes and watch videos on other websites is always a bit much. That being said, however, I do love the effort of the real videos, and I hope they make a return in Act 3. Now for some more positive notes. I really love the atmosphere. While I think it may have suffered at the beginning, everything past the beginning of Chapter 2, basically after seeing the flashlight guy, made up for it. The cool looking facility, the orange lit buildings, the outside town area, the shoreline and dinghy drive, man, those are great. The sound design is flawless as well. The skybox of the town area, I mean, come on. This is like my childhood captured in a sky texture, which I didn't know was a thing. Getting lighting right is the god level challenge of designing anything. Any form of visual art will suffer from bad lighting, and thus it's super important to get it right. And damn did this game nail it. Using it to its advantage to create beautiful sceneries you won't forget that fast. In terms of gameplay, Act 2 did a good job, I thought. There wasn't a whole lot of combat, or the few times it was there, it did alright to pretty good. The puzzles were fun, sneaking around the turrets especially, and damn the soundtrack, holy shit. So is it worth $6? Absolutely. Please go and support this guy in any way possible. And if you really can't spare the $6, there are regularly sales as big as 75%, and if even that is too much, come join the Discord and we'll soon be giving away 3 copies of it. Though please, if you have the funds, just go and buy it. Now for Act 3. You can wishlist it on Steam already and it is dubbed Arctic Cold. There's a small teaser trailer and some images and it looks very similar to Act 2, as is to be expected. I think imitating what Act 2 did is the best bet in this case, even if I think Act 2 did fall flat in certain areas. But I think they could easily be ironed out. I think getting into gameplay quicker will be important. Definitely be sure to skip the intro phase. Get into action immediately this time. Having an introductory intro is a good practice in general. I mean, that's literally where the word intro comes from. And I can even understand it in Act 2 as it was a whole new engine. Though I believe the pre-intro area should have been used to learn all the controls and basic stuff, jumping into action way quicker. I hope Act 3 also answers more questions directly. I really hope John Darrell isn't dead. and that he can perhaps give more details. Maybe have George Richmond come back. The first 2 acts created these great characters, and it would be a shame to not hear from them again. Though maybe also add an entirely new one, that could also work. I'd perhaps also suggest getting more combat into it. You're probably starting to notice that I use the same combat clip over and over again. It's because so little of it existed in Act 2. Games don't need combat to work necessarily. But given the tone Act 1 set, I think it's too deeply integrated now, and Act 2 had a bit too little combat. Even though I must say that I personally didn't mind the amount we got. I'm also not really sure if Act 3 will be the finale. 3 acts is a popular amount of acts for a game to end. But reading articles the developer released on Steam, there is no mention of finale. Thus maybe there will be one more after Act 3. Though perhaps it might start to get a bit too stretchy after that in terms of story, as the whole story is already answered on the website basically. Something I haven't talked about yet is how Act 2 started out, not the actual start of the game, but how the literal product started. It released in a very unfinished state in early access, and it was the main reason I never played it. I can't promise that this was the case, but I'm pretty sure that back then the reviews were all mixed. They are on very positive now at 85% positive, but back then they weren't, and it was because it was so unfinished that I simply wrote the game off. It was wrong of me. And I'm honestly sorry to the developer that I did that. I will blame it on me being young, but honestly, I think if I saw an unfinished linear story game, I would simply skip it today as well and forget about it. I see the benefits of doing it. In a recent article about Act 3, the developer mentions that he wants to see people play Act 3, and thus will most likely release it later this year and develop it in the open, like with Act 2. Feedback and playtesting is probably the most important aspect in development, and thus it makes sense for an indie developer to do this. I just think it's unfortunate how much steam it takes away from the game. A partial release will never hit as hard as a full one will, as mods and indie games fully rely on word of mouth to spread news about their game. And it's really hard to recommend an unfinished product to a friend. Check out this game, sounds a lot better than check out this pre-release of a game. And once it does for the release, a ton of the core fans will have already played and forgotten about it, taking even more steam out of the release. In reality, the situation isn't black and white at all. There are pros and cons to both ways. I think in the case of Estranged Act 2, this was one of the things that caused the game to have a lot less success than the first act when speaking on player count. Act 2 has a total of 232 reviews compared to Act 1's 7,015, which is a huge shame. Act 2 is great. I believe a more direct release would have benefited the game in this regard. But of course, I respect what the developer did, and perhaps he doesn't care about how many players his games have, which I would of course respect as well. Basically, Alan Edwards, if you need playtesters, I'm down to help. Estranged Act 1 was a part of my childhood, and I would love to contribute to a future title of it. So in conclusion, Act 1 is great, Act 2 is great, and Act 3 will hopefully be great as well. The games did incredible things in terms of atmosphere, and I hope you guys go and play them and support the singular developer behind it. I'll be sure to cover Act 3 once it, fully, releases. Which, if you go by Act 2 releasing in early access in 2017 and being marked as release in 2020, the full game should be out by 2027. No god. Shout out to Alan Edwards and thank you for the great games and memories. So yeah, otherwise, thank you for watching. Support indie developers! This might be the best part of the game actually.